Yeah, we're live. Hello, this is Catherine Holland of catherineholland.co.uk, inspiring author and breathwork coach. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon for one of the Your Life Without Limits series of breathwork webinars. And today I'm going to bring you the explanation about breathwork, and the little focus today is going to be on using the breath to integrate challenging things as they are happening. So I hope you find that useful. So let me begin by finding my notes. That'd be a good start. And just roughly to give you an idea of what we're going to cover, I will tell a little bit about myself because I know some of you don't know me very well, and about my experience of the uniting ability of the breath, which I have found fundamentally important in my life and my growth, my personal spiritual growth. And then I will talk and describe breath work and how it works, the way that you do it, and also why it is that we restricted our breathing in the first place, because you might imagine that we would all know how to breathe. And as part of that, I will do the 20 breaths exercise with you live on air, and you can check, that's one of the videos on YouTube if you want to. Okay, yeah, a little bit about myself to begin with. I am an author. I've written many books, many guides rather. I've written about 3 or 4 proper books that come into paper print. An inspiring author because one of my books is Rebirthing Breathwork. And also I'm a life and breath coach. So what I love to do is to coach people in their breathing, but in their lives. So I use quite a few other modalities to do that, particularly work with raw food, actually, with nutrition and the other ways that we can increase the blood flow and the oxygen availability in the body. And I've written a number of guides about particular things like how to treat your own injuries, which will become apparent in I'll tell you my little story in a minute as to why I've done that. Yeah, so lots of self-treatment for pain, but also covering some topics like breastfeeding. I was a breastfeeding counsellor for a long time. So my publications cover the whole breadth of who I am, and they keep growing as I keep growing, which is really rather nice. So my personal story, I started breathwork many years ago, about 25 years ago now, because I had personal difficulties, particularly relationship difficulties. But the problem was that I was afraid to live alone. So at that time I was married to my first husband I had children with, and I had a younger family, but I was also aware that I was really unhappy and unfulfilled in my relationship. And clearly desperately so, otherwise I wouldn't have considered leaving the children's father at that sort of time. But anyway, I went for breathwork because I realised I really needed help. I was particularly desperate. A friend of mine who said to me, he was a friend at the time because he also educated his own daughter, and I didn't know about the breathwork. And he said, it's drastic, but it's quick. That's right. And I spoke to him about the difficulties I was having, and he told me about it. And I pretty much ignored it. And then 18 months later, when I was complaining about the same thing, he said, you know, I told you about rebirthing and you ignored me. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so I took the hint the next time. And I was delighted to find that there was a rebirthing, well, actually a couple reasonably close to where I lived, partly because I had to deal with taking the children and finding somewhere for them to be while I was having my sessions, but also because the work that I'd read about techniques using breath were all based in America, and I thought I was going to have to wait until the children had grown up and I'd saved up enough money to go and train or do my own stuff over there. So that was a huge relief. I only had to go to Leamington Spa, which is a 30-minute train ride, and that was grand. And then following that, about 15 years later, I was hit by a car, and my lower leg was crushed, and I lost half my blood in a few minutes. And I didn't die. Now, I put the fact that I didn't die down to the breath work, which I immediately enacted as part of my whole persona now. My breathing is so practiced and so honed that I did it automatically when I was in extremis. And I used it for the following days when I was undergoing huge operations, and also quite a lot of psychological changes, because I had to adjust the fact, first of all, to the fact I might lose my lower leg, and then because a marvellous surgeon saved it, yes, I had to adjust to having a fixator screwed into it for 6 months, which was hideous. I had to adjust to my beautiful legs, which have always been my trademark, looking somewhat different. Got skin grafts on both legs because they took it off one and put it on the other. And a huge amount of challenge involved in all of the upset around that sort of thing that you can imagine. So having survived that and coming back and doing really well, first of all, I was looking for people to help me to get properly fit. And I managed to find a certain amount of that. And then I realised that lots of it was to do with me, and I was going to have to work on it myself. And that meant that I needed to train. It meant that I needed to set up a practice, which I actually did in Oxford, because by the time all of this had happened, I'd met my current husband, who was instrumental in helping me to recover really well, which is very nice. And also to have the will and the wish to do as well as I possibly could. I was learning to ride a motorbike at the time I was hit. I've always ridden a bicycle, but I was learning to ride a little motorbike. And he's a keen cyclist, competitive cyclist, and also a keen motorcyclist. So that was helpful for me, because it gave me somebody to want to get well for and take my test and go back in, which was lovely. And then I actually trained and practiced treating other people's injuries. So I treated my own, and I still do, and I'm still work on my leg because I want it to get completely better. The difficulty I have currently is in my ankle, my left ankle. I have a lack of complete movement to my ankle, which is, it's really only challenge if I wish to squat now, but has been a difficulty, and I've had to do all sorts of things to make it well. Gary helped by encouraging me to hop on it. I thought he was completely mad when he suggested that, but anyway, it turned out to be useful, and I did do it. 40 hops was good, obviously good for it. And then I learned to ski, which I think is brilliant. I'm so proud of that. And certainly because one ankle doesn't bend, I have to ski completely on one leg at a time. So I'm sure that's been good for it too, physio. So yeah, that's some of my story. So then I treated people for 14 years in Oxford, in the clinic that I developed myself. And then I finally realised it was time I wrote my story, and lots of my patients asked me to. So I began to write the story of the accident. And as I did so, my eyes were opened to what an extraordinary person I'd become, what I'd made myself into, to be able not only to survive this accident, which was the major thing. I had a time, I don't know how long, when I actually died, and I travelled away from my body. I'm quite aware of it. I remember it all. And I had a choice to carry on where there was no pain, or to go back, knowing full well that the pain would return. Because when you're not in your body, you don't feel any pain, which was very tempting, very inviting at that moment. So a drink of water. And so yeah, I chose to come back because I had children. That was the the long and the short of it is that having the children that I wanted to see grow up meant that I returned, and I had to be valiant and face this difficult time. And then in writing the book, I realised the significant things that I'd done, that I did currently and repeatedly, the way that I lived my life, were what meant that I survived. I started writing that book, which is going to turn into a physical book eventually when I get around to it, but it's currently a Kindle book. You can also buy it in PDF if you don't have a Kindle. And that's called Indestructible Soul, which is the name of my business now. And I also extracted from it the nuggets, the actual parts of the story that I believe were fundamental. So the life habits, the practices that I have, I believe saved my life and also meant that I recovered really well. I didn't have loads of the difficulties that other people have when they've had a huge accident and a long recovery. And that's called Indestructible Health, and it's a free download. You can download it from my website. So yeah, that's a bit of my story, and it's why it is that I'm practicing still, again, teaching breathwork. I think it's an extraordinary technique, and I will now describe it. So moving on from my story, I believe it's extraordinary because it bridges the mind and the body, our head and our body, which Western medicine tries to separate. It also bridges that connection between your thoughts and your feelings, for obvious reasons, because your thoughts are starting off in your head and your feelings are bodily experiences. But then there's another connection which I find really important, fundamentally important, now that I've moved into a place where my spiritual practice is an incredibly important part of my life, and that is that I believe that it crosses between our physical experience and life and our spiritual experience and life. And in obvious ways, we breathe in when we enter the world, we breathe out when we pass away. Nice use of the word. I didn't mean to say pass away, but that's the expression people use, isn't it? And so the last thing we do is to breathe out when we move on into the spiritual realm. And also the words, particularly inspiration, which as we breathe in, it's the word we use for when we have a wonderful idea. And I have recently come to properly understand that our ideas don't come from within us, within our physical body and our individual experience. They come from our spiritual experience. That's why we're inspired. And yeah, it took me a long time to realise that, but hey, it's always good to know. And so that's some of the reasons why I believe that breathwork is has the capacity to bridging mind-body, bridging mind-spirit, all that stuff. And it's practically really useful because one of the things that it does is to integrate experiences that we keep reliving because they were traumatic. And that's been one of the joyful things that I've had the honour of doing with my clients over the years, is to assist people in moving into the present because their past experience has been continuing with them over and over. And that's been a really super thing to be able to do. So for somebody who's had an experience of near drowning experience, or somebody who's had a sexual assault experience, or people who've had trauma, mind trauma, well, any type of trauma, physical trauma, where they're then afraid to go out, that sort of thing. It's really useful for letting those things go to rest so that we don't carry them at the front of our consciousness all the time and it hampers and hinders our present experience. And that's the reason why it's so profound and it's so powerful. So let me go on to explain the way that it works. But before we do that, let me just have a little look at the page. I'm now trying to be clever and find the other page where it shows me. Oh, there's another window. Yes, there's another window that shows me that I'm live. Yes, good. And also it shows me the chat box to the right. It's to the right of your screen too, isn't it? Now, just checking the chat's enabled. My mouse gone. So if you wish to, you can write a message in the chat box. So if you have any questions while we're on air, I'd be very happy to address those at the end. Please write them in. Obviously, if you're listening to this later on YouTube, that doesn't apply in the same way, although, of course, I would welcome your feedback, and I will post this on my Facebook page. So if you've then watched the replay, you can ask me something. Okay, let me just find my page again. So now I'd like to move on to describing the breath work itself. Just putting that there so I can still see it while I'm talking to you. Okay. The breath work itself is a continuous cycle of in-breaths and out-breaths. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out, which is what people think they do. And they're quite surprised to learn that we actually breathe in and out only about 50% of the time, which is extraordinary, isn't it? The place where people usually stop the breathing is on the in-breath. So they breathe in. At that point, if it tenses in any way, you tend to hold it. If you're really relaxed, you might, well, you don't hold it because you're not tight, but there might be a small pause. At the end of that breath, there might be a small pause. But when people are doing it unconsciously and because they're feeling stressful, they hold it on the in-breath. Tension is on the in-breath. Relaxation is on the out-breath. So I just thought I'd describe that for you. And in doing so, and describing that the rebirthing breath is circular, cyclical, sometimes we imagine in infinity symbol as we do so in and out. We'll do the 20 breaths exercise in a minute. Let's talk to you first about why we might hold our breath like that. And I would love to tell you about a video I've seen that's, perhaps you've seen too, that's been on Facebook. And it's an extraordinary video of a woman giving birth in the passenger seat of a car on her way to the birthing centre. Poor woman, of course she was distressed. But actually the video is about, it's 4 minutes long. It's about the actual final second stage, where her husband, who is patiently and calmly driving the car, realises that she's going to have the baby whether they get to the birth centre or not. And I don't know what his background is, but clearly he's not fazed at all, which is wonderful. But it gives you such a picture of the power and the intensity of this woman and baby's experience and her unreadiness and how that will impact on her baby. And it's worth watching it because it isn't distressing. It's very straightforward. Well, maybe it's distressing to somebody else, but it wasn't to me. Very straightforward because it just shows how her body is working, and you can see the bump that's on her front. and you can see it moving as the baby's orientating itself to come out. And it only takes, I don't know, about a minute or a minute and a half for the baby to expel itself completely out of her body. And with her husband's willingness and helpful pulling down of her trousers, she's sitting in the passenger seat. So all you can see is her top, the side of her leg, and the trousers, the top of her leg, and then this baby as it appears, and she picks him up. I mean, it's extraordinary. But if you think from the baby's perspective, and this is why I'm telling you the story, babies pick up in those moments, their very first moments in the world, how life is, who's expecting them, if people are ready, whether it's easy, whether it's difficult. And this poor little man, he comes out and he howls pretty quickly, perhaps because his mother's distressed, I don't know. But if a baby's born into a calm environment, they don't cry. They look around calmly, and take in everything that's around them. They open their eyes, have a good look around. Yeah. So what happened to us when we learned to breathe is a profound, deep effect on the way we breathe and behave in new, changing, stressful environments forever afterwards. And that moment and the way that we are handled, the way that we perceive how we're handled, it's all very subjective, really guides and imprints on us for the rest of our lives, and gives a pattern and an expectation to us as to what's going to happen, what we believe life brings, what we believe it reflects to us, and then what we reflect back onto life. You may be familiar with the expression that we create our own reality. And when you watch a baby, when you see what environment they have been constructed in, what very feelings are embedded in every cell as they grow, you can understand how that orientates our expectations for the future. It's quite obvious. So let me drink of water. Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen to that particular baby, although his parents were very pleased to see him once he'd arrived. But for each of us, it is our own journey. It is our own personal journey as to how we perceive the way we arrived, how we perceive how easy life is, how we perceive how helpful people are to us, and what our part is in creating the experience that we're then going to lead. And also it's very much influenced by the beliefs of the people around us. So that's another really important aspect of what we deal with and what makes us feel stressful. And I would like to say now about the word stress. Stress is a description like quality. You can have good quality, you can have poor quality. You can have too much stress, you can have not enough stress. Not enough stress is boredom, too much stress is challenging. But stress itself isn't a descriptor. It's not a qualitative word, it's just a descriptor. And it's about the amount of testing and pushing and challenging and stretching that we find acceptable, pleasurable, or too much to bear. And life needs to give us just enough for us to feel that we are making progress, that we are having enough challenges to keep us interested, that we are doing a good job, that we're having a nice time. That's what the balance is all about. And life is supposed to be fun. We are supposed to be having a ball in our journey through. So this is the reflection that we get as we breathe. So as we take those first breaths and the later breaths, and we experience stressful times afterwards, how we manage them, how we deal with them, how we react to them if we've got ourselves frightened by stress too much, then we will hold our bodies, we'll hold our muscles to stop us breathing fully so that we don't become overwhelmed, and that's the problem. We then don't breathe fully, and we also don't express the emotions that we need to deal with the situations, because the breathing muscles are what control our ability to express ourselves, because our expression comes out in our breath, with our words or our cries. So I hope that gives you a bit of a picture about how breath contributes to our experience and our ability to be truly ourselves in the world, minute by minute and day to day. Okay, so now let's do the 20 breaths exercise. And please go try it along with me. So the 20 breaths exercise is 4 short breaths and 1 long breath 4 times. And I'll count on my fingers, because then I can remember when I've done 20. Breathe in and out through your nose or through your mouth. You can switch between the two, but while you're breathing in and out through your nose, stay with it. While you're breathing in and out through your mouth, stay with it. Nose breathing seems to be more calming. Mouth breathing seems to be more expressive and felt in the body. You can choose. I'm going to have to do mouth breathing because I'm going to be talking. Otherwise, I'd probably use my nose. No, I probably would use my mouth. So, fingers at the ready. 4 short breaths. And 1 long breath. And 1 long breath. 4 short breaths. Four short breaths. One long breath. So, that's the 20 breaths exercise. How do you feel? I feel a little bit buzzy in the chest. Tiny bit dizzy around here. A little bit of windiness in my stomach. Anyhow, it's a lovely little exercise to do if you want to bring yourself back to the present. So if you want a specific exercise and you can't think what else to do, that's really useful. And you can remind yourself anytime you want to. You don't have to watch this whole thing. There is just that. There's a very short video on my channel on YouTube, Catherine Holland, where you will find the 20 breaths exercise labelled as that. And that links nicely into talking about using your breath to integrate difficult challenges as they're happening. Excuse me. You can, once you have trained and learned breathwork, you become very much more aware of your breathing. But you could teach yourself to without doing the whole load of sessions if you want to become aware of it. And you can use the 20 breaths exercise to help you managing something that's currently a challenge. I either sit and close my eyes and feel, putting my hands here, what's going on around me if I want to integrate it, or I actually go and lie down, because I find the letting my body control go is a huge factor in releasing myself to be really present with my feelings, with all of my feelings. It's a really useful way to release any sort of watchfulness, consciousness of my body in the chair and sitting up and allowing myself to switch off for a while. I find it just actually going and lying down when something's been really difficult, helpful. And since I have done lots of breathwork sessions, which normally last about an hour, and I do them on a pretty regular basis, I do also find that going and lying down just for 5 minutes and connect to my breath definitely helps when something challenging is going on. So I could recommend that to you. Becoming aware. So if something really difficult is going on, if I'm feeling troubled about something, become aware of my breath, and I will perhaps give a little talk to myself about it's okay, stay calm, breathe, it's okay to breathe, it's safe to breathe. Feeling the feelings, it's safe to feel the feelings, whether they're fear or worry, concern about what's going to happen, and thinking, actually, if I just stay here and look at the sky, oh, there's a big bird up there, look at the beautiful trees, look at the cloud formations, it's a beautiful day, and become present, then what's going on and what's happening isn't such a great part of me. So I'm still okay, even if things are happening around me that I'm not comfortable with, or are difficult things happening to somebody I love. That small distance allowing me to become objective and removing myself just slightly and refocusing gives me enough perspective not to be totally drawn in, even if it's something really important. Yeah. So I hope you find that useful and you might be able to practice that a little. You can, of course, watch this again if you would like to. You can go back. You'll get the reminder anyway. I'll email it to you. So now that I've covered the things I wanted to cover in this particular webinar, which is about the uniting ability of the breath on all levels, and about how you can practice it, why we restrict our breathing and how liberating it helps us, and the 20 breaths exercise, which I hope you enjoyed. What I would like to talk about now is how you can work with me if you want to. So for those of you watching this video, there is a 25% discount on my Rebirthing Breathwork program. And to obtain that, you can either PM me on Facebook, or you can book up on my Calendly diary for a direction call. That won't commit you to doing the program with me in any way. So if you want to talk about breathwork and how it might help you, please feel free. Go to calendly.com, calendly.com, and then it's /Catherine Holland. And on there you can book up a direction call with me where we'll set up how to speak to one another, which I prefer by Skype if that's possible for you too. So let me tell you about the Rebirthing Breathwork program, because it's a Rebirthing Breathwork webinar. The program starts off with what's often called a VIP day, where we will spend a day, which is sort of a 4 or 5 hour stretch, because it's done on Skype, maybe with a break in the middle, or depending on how we fit it in. And this is the most extraordinary thing to do. So aside from the breath work, there will be a breath work session in that day. But aside from the breath work on that day, what we will do is to go through your dreams and desires for the whole of your life. And it's a wonderful time to focus totally on the very thing, the very person, the very purpose that you are and you have. And it's a really powerful time. It's your focus. You are the focus entirely for the whole day. You have an opportunity to really let go and to go deeply into the things that you wish to be and to do and to develop in your life from now onwards, and to build the biggest, best version of yourself, and to ask for the highest dreams and goals you could ever dream of. And then to begin to put those into action. So finding out what might hold you up, and then in the breathwork session, putting that all together, allowing all of the restrictions that you've had to leave you, and allowing yourself to accept the beginning of the new you. And it's just a beautiful, gorgeous thing to do. So I start off the program with that. It's a 3-month program, and then weekly after that you have a breathwork session. This is all done on Skype, it's all done online, for 12 sessions. 2 of those sessions you may wish to work on some of the other things that I teach and develop, such as the raw food and the other types of what I call supportive medicines, medicine in the sense of things that help to heal you, not in the sense of drugs. That's sort of changing your life into a really wholesome experience where you are building on what you need, and you are taking away the things that have taken away your energy or challenged your body in ways which you know are not helpful to you. So, for example, the way that regularly drinking alcohol challenges your body, the way that eating junk food challenges your body, those sorts of things are what I'm talking about. So developing a really wholesome life where you are happy and enjoying it as you're doing it. And the breathwork sessions are designed to teach you to be able to do it alone. So a Rebirthing Breathwork program is like driving lessons, where you start off with the coach, with the instructor, and then you go away on your own because you're confident, ready, prepared, trained, and you can do it yourself. The first few sessions tend to be about the biggest, deepest things that we've had challenges with in the past, on the deepest level. We do go back to them, and when I say we, I mean the rebirthee, the person doing the breathing. You go back to them for the rest of your life, probably. There will be times when these things surface again, but they never come back in a way that is so big that we can't handle it again. And that's the joy. So the rebirther is accompanying you. They are witnessing, they are supporting, while you reach for the experiences that you were too highly stressed to deal with properly the first time, and too unsupported to deal with the first time, so that you lock them away. And when we lock things away, we hold our breath. So then we're unable to express them, and the energy involved in holding that in is huge. When I did my rebirthing and discovered that I'd been holding my chest tightly as I'm explaining, the liberation when I let that go was enormous. And it was about, I'm trying to think, I'd done about 3 sessions on the particular issue and when the letting go happened. So the idea is that your sessions with me are accompanying you during that time when you're doing the deepest and most profound work that you need somebody to support you with. There's nothing that says that you can't carry on longer than 10 sessions. That's something that's always open to discussion. And I had 16 actually when I did mine. But we give people the idea that 10 is a useful benchmark if you are wishing to build a new person, a new personality, because it gives you the security of knowing that it's ongoing, so you can begin to delve into things that are quite deep. So the emotional security of having already set up a framework for allowing yourself to develop and to be vulnerable, I believe, is a part of allowing yourself to look at things otherwise you wouldn't be able to. The sessions are 2 hours long. The breathing itself is one hour, but the session, usually people like to have a bit of an intro and a bit of an outro, because it's usually big stuff for the person who's doing the breathwork session. And in that time during the program, of course, we can talk about the other skills that you might wish to develop to support yourself on your journey as well. And the price for that 3-month program in pounds, with the 25% discount, if you're watching this, is £1,122. And I've converted that into dollars in my very best conversion. It's 1,680. And in euros, it's 1,536. Obviously, if you wish to take me up on that, let me know that you've heard about it so you can have the discount and book up a direction call. I would be absolutely delighted to speak to you. And thank you very much for listening. Look out for the next webinar date. I will be doing another one, probably in a fortnight's time. But you can watch the replay if you would like to. This is Catherine Holland saying goodbye. Thank you very much for listening to Your Life Without Limits. Goodbye.